This Axial UTB18 Capra is absolutely the ultimate performance bargain. With just a few key upgrades, you can achieve 10 scale performance for a fraction of the price. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what I've done to mine, and then we're going to go out for a performance test. So let's not waste any time. Let's jump right in. Alright, so before we get into all the details, let's just take a quick moment to appreciate what this rig looks like here. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. Loving the forged carbon look. We'll get into that in a moment, but loving the purposeful look of this rig. So let's go ahead and dive into it here, starting with the wheels and tires here. Now these are Endura 1.55 tires with some soft silicone inserts. These are actually the stock wheels that I painted to match the overall livery. Now most people would go for a brass wheel, but actually these axle shafts, a lot of people already know the axle shafts on these UTB18 Capra is made from spaghetti noodle. So you just think about getting this thing in a bind and it's just gonna snap. Now ask me how I know. Let me show you something here real quick. I had the same experience happen to me with my axle shaft. I barely put it in a bind and it just snapped the axle shaft right off. So very common issue. So I decided I didn't want to put too much unsprung weight on these axle shafts because they're not reliable at all. So I stuck with the stock wheels to keep that weight off the axles and the strain off the drivetrain. I think it did an overall good job in terms of maintaining the durability of the axle shaft there. Now behind the wheels is I put some brass portal covers on there. So I have the brass portal covers on there to bring that weight bias forward a little bit. That did a pretty good job there. I also have overdrive in the front, so 20% overdrive on the front axle. Stock setup on the rear. Stock servo. I think the servo on this truck is pretty good. For the weight of this truck, these are 10 scale servos. They're plenty strong enough to turn the wheels on this rig. So stock servo, stock suspension. However, I added more preload to the front, to the rear, pardon me, and none on the front to shift that weight bias forward. I want this truck to have a slight rake to it to help it to climb a little bit better. With the portal, the brass portal covers and the stiffer springs on the back, it kind of helps that front to stay planted down. As you can see, it has a slight rake to it there. Now, one mod that I did to the suspension is I removed the bump stops, these little rubber grommets here, as you can see there. I removed these little rubber bump stops from the front shocks and left it in the rear. So the travel on the rear is very slightly less than the front. The thought process being I wanted the rear to run out of suspension travel. So once this runs out of suspension travel, it's going to pitch that weight bias forward to help keep that front axle on the ground. As for the electronics in this truck, I am running the stock motor. However, I did upgrade the stock ESC. Now it comes with this Spectrum 25 amp brushed ESC here. The power on this truck is actually pretty good. However, it doesn't quite have that slow speed control. It's not quite as precise as you would want it. So I did go ahead and upgrade the ESC to a 1060, a Hobbywing 1060. Now I know everyone's gonna say, oh, the 1080 is much better, but actually for a rig of this size, running portal gears, the right gearing and the right weight, the 1060 does a pretty good job. So you're gonna see that in just a moment here, just how smooth the 1060 runs on this setup. Now I did upgrade the battery pack as well. I'm running a big 3000 milliamp hour battery pack, which you have to shoehorn it in there to get this to work. So let me show you something real quick here. Now, the 1060 has a T-plug, so I'm running a T-plug there. But in order to get this battery pack to work, as you can see, it does fit in the stock location. However, there was a little tab here that kept the stock battery pack from like slopping around or moving around. So I had to shave that down to get this one to close. But let me go ahead and plug this in real quick so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So with that big 3000 milliamp hour pack, as you can see, it is absolutely shoehorned in there, but it fits pretty good. Like I said, you did have to remove that little tab from underneath here to add the sufficient clearance, but closes down with no problem. I'm using the stock transmitter, so I retain most of the, well, all of the functionality from the previous setup. So turn that on there, turn that on. I move the power switch to the top here. And there you go. So all the functionality remains. I want to show you just how good this slow speed control is on this 1060. Now, real quick before I show you that, this 1060, let me show you underneath the rig here real quick. But that 1060, the one issue I had when replacing the 1060 or putting this one in is the battery lead, the T-plug lead is very short. So the stock setup is the receiver is at the front and the ESC is at the back, but I had to swap that around and it is absolutely crammed in there. But it does bring a little bit more low down weight, so I'm not complaining too much. So let's just take a quick look at the slow speed control with this Hobbywing 1060 here. Now look at this. That's a 1060 brush setup. I think that's plenty of low speed control there. Lots of power as well. That's on 2S. I would get a lot more wheel speed if I put it on 3S. So good controls. Everything, the functionality of this truck remains the same. So I still have the 4-wheel steer. Everything works exactly as it did before. So we're back in. Now, first off, this truck I think performed excellently. There was so much travel as well. The traction I never really wanted for traction. Good stability as well. That's the thing. A lot of people like to throw brass at their builds, you know, put a bunch of brass, portals, brass here, brass there. But the thing about it is the more weight you add to the truck, it's the more you have to pull that up a climb, or it's the worse the side hill performance gets. So I've really learned that you don't want to put too much brass on your rigs. And as a result, this truck handles so nimbly. It's so nice. It's so smooth. The 1060 had ample performance. Of course, if I had a brushless system, it would be a lot smoother. But I would argue having a brush system adds to the fun factor because it's that much more technical. You have to be that much more precise with your inputs. As for the improvements that I would make on this truck is I would definitely add the metal steering rod. It would make that steering a lot more precise. There were a few occasions where I wanted to turn and I could see this thing flexing under the pressure. So I would definitely upgrade that. The next thing is I would add the fully independent rear steer because there were a few occasions where I wanted to have that perfect precision to put those rear tires exactly where I wanted them, and I didn't quite have it with this 3-position switch here. So I would definitely do that. All I would need to do really is change the transmitter and I would get that. So I'm gonna do that. I think that would go a far way. But this truck is so awesome. I think it's so great because it's so unique in its size, being that it's a little bit bigger than the typical 18 scale, as you can see there. A little bigger than a typical 18 scale, but it's much smaller than a 10 scale. So you can have much more unique lines, and it has pretty close to 10 scale performance. Let me know what you think in the comments. But I'm loving this Axial Capra. I think it's so cool. I think it looks great with this forged carbon look. Let me know what you think, guys. Well, that's been it. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.